Coming up on The World Today. Russia says it will recapture areas of annexed territory that fell to a Ukrainian advance as President Putin signs laws formalizing annexation. Liz Truss addresses Tory party conference, says she will forge ahead with her economic plan, saying status quo is not an option. And dozens killed in India after a wedding party bus veers off the road in northern Uttarakhand state. Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin with the latest in the conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. EU ambassadors have this morning agreed an 8th round of sanctions against Russia. Details haven't yet been released, but diplomats say the measures include export controls, import bans, broadening of sanctions criteria, legal alignment with the planned G7 oil price cap. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky said the country's forces were making rapid progress in 3 regions against Russian forces. He said Ukraine had recaptured dozens of towns in the south and the east. It is difficult to independently verify the claims, but the UK's Ministry of Defence made similar comments. But in Moscow, President Vladimir Putin signed legislation annexing 4 regions of Ukraine, a move illegal under international law. Russia does not fully control the regions, and 2 of them are where Ukraine says it is making advances.
Kiev and its Western allies fear that
Moscow has warned that the U.S.'s decision to send more military aid to Ukraine increases the danger of a direct military clash between Russia and the West. Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, said it was an immediate threat to Moscow, describing the U.S. as a participant of the conflict. Earlier, the U.S. announced another $625 million in military aid to Ukraine. Advanced U.S. weaponry has been credited with helping Ukraine build momentum against occupying Russian forces. Ukrainian troops have made significant advances in the country's northeast and south in recent weeks. The latest U.S. hardware includes another 4 of the high-precision HIMARS multiple rocket systems. In all, Washington has committed nearly $17 billion in military support for Kyiv since Russia's president invaded Ukraine 24th of February. After suffering a string of major defeats in the battlefield in recent weeks, Russia has vowed to defend itself with all means available, not ruling out the use of its nuclear weapons. Moscow is also pushing ahead with its annexation attempts of the 4 regions, Donetsk, Luhansk in the east, Kherson and Zaporizhia in the south. But let's hear more now. The United States says it has no indication that Russia is preparing to use nuclear weapons, despite nuclear saber-rattling by Russian President Mr. Putin. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said yesterday that Mr. Putin has warned he is not bluffing about his threat to use nuclear weapons.
We always say nothing without Ukraine, no action on Ukraine without Ukraine, right? That is something when it comes to any type of diplomacy or conversation that's being had, that certainly they have to be in the room for that piece. And look, when it comes to the potential nuclear threat, we have been very clear about that. We take any nuclear weapons or nuclear saber rattling very seriously here. But I do want to say, that we have not seen any reason to adjust our own strategic nuclear posture, nor do we have indication that Russia is preparing to imminently use nuclear weapons. What you're seeing, the $600 million that we announced today of nuclear assistance, security assistance, is just a continued commitment that we have showed to Ukraine, because as you all know, they are fighting. The brave people of Ukraine are fighting for their freedom, they're fighting for their sovereignty, and so this is something that we believe, not just the U.S., our allies and partners around the world see this as an important partnership that we have to make sure that Ukraine is able to do that.
Meanwhile, the White House also urged Russia to provide a counteroffer to U.S. attempts to trade for the release of WNBA star Brittany Griner. Washington has offered to swap jailed arms dealer Victor Bout for Griner and Paul Whelan, a former Marine. White House press secretary told reporters the U.S. had yet to receive a serious response to the offer.
Let me first say that we are aware of Russia's announcement that Brittany Griner will be forced to undergo another sham judicial proceeding. She should be released immediately. As we have said many times, Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan have been wrongfully detained by Russian authorities. President Biden, who met with, as you all know, their families about 2 weeks ago right here in the White House, is continuing to direct his administration to engage with Russian government through every available channel and make every effort to bring them home. That is a commitment that he has made. As I have said many times, it is again a commitment that he has made on their particular negotiations. But we want Russia. What we will say is that we want Russia to take the offer that we have put on the table, a substantial offer, as you've heard us say many times, seriously. And if not, or they could make a serious counteroffer, but they need to make a serious counteroffer. But again, the president has demonstrated that he is willing to go to extraordinary lengths and make tough decisions to bring Americans home, as he did just over the weekend to bring home all of the Americans designated as wrongfully detained in Venezuela. So this is a commitment that he has made to the American people, and this is a commitment that he has made to their families.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will impress upon EU leaders meeting this week the need for a gas price cap and to ensure any financial support measures allow fair competition. EU governments have debated a gas price cap for weeks without reaching agreement, while a majority of EU members support some form of cap. Germany, Denmark and the Netherlands are opposed, citing concerns over security of supply. In a speech to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, the EU executive chief said she would lay out a roadmap in a letter to the leaders who will gather in Prague from Thursday. Von der Leyen said the EU had to ensure individual members did not outbid each other for gas on world markets and drive prices up.
Let's look at gas storage, which is almost... We have now to limit this inflationary impact of gas on electricity and everywhere in Europe. This is why we are ready to discuss a cap on the price of gas that is used to generate electricity. This cap would also be a first step on the way to a structural reform, an overall reform of our electricity market. Such a cap on gas prices must be designed properly to ensure security of supply, and it is a temporary solution to cater for the fact that the TTF, that is our main price benchmark, is no longer representative for our market. Honourable members, these are far-reaching measures. And I wholeheartedly agree with you when you say in the resolution you will vote on today that exceptional times require exceptional measures where the Union needs to act as jointly and as united as ever. The acts of sabotage against Nord Stream pipelines have shown how vulnerable our energy infrastructure is. For the first time in recent history, it has become a target. Pipelines and underwater cables connect European citizens and companies to the world. They are the lifeline of data and energy. It is in the interest of all Europeans to better protect this critical infrastructure.
Later in the bulletin, we'll be talking more about energy and how it's impacting the world. Well, remember the Russian TV journalist Marina Ovsyannikova, famous for staging on-air protests against Russia's war in Ukraine. Well, she confirmed that she had escaped house arrest over charges of spreading fake news again, saying she had no case to answer. She later released a short video clip showing an electronic tag around her ankle, saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin should be wearing one, not her. She says in the clip on her Telegram social media channel that it is he, not I, who should be kept away from society and tried over the genocide of the people of Ukraine and the mass killing of Russian men. Let's talk some more about the situation there. Joining us, Mr. John Essie. He is a security expert and also a lawyer. Thank you for joining us. First, I'd like to get your thoughts on the war. How bad could things go? Or what are your thoughts on the fact that things could actually go nuclear? Because we keep hearing, about the possibilities.
Thank you for having me, Millicent. Good evening. It's very unlikely that he'll go nuclear. I've read some of those reports. But Vladimir Putin is a student of history, and he knows that the West has blinked before under similar circumstances. He's played all his cards. He's thrown his last dice. And he knows that the only way he can go forward is if the West blinks first. Now, in 1938, Adolf Hitler did the same thing. He made the same argument that Putin made to initially invade Georgia, then Ukraine. And he cyber-rattled until Neville Chamberlain, who was the prime minister of the wartime prime minister of the UK at the time, went and negotiated with Adolf Hitler for appeasement, and that eventually triggered the Second World War. Putin also knows that we read history, that Russia has only ever mobilized 3 times. The first was a catalyst to the First World War. The second prolonged the Second World War in 1941. This is the 3rd time Russia has ever mobilized, and he is thinking that we would think being the 3rd time, given the 2 previous occasions, that this might eventually lead to a war as well. Putin has nothing to gain from a nuclear war. Besides, what he's talking about is not even the strategic nuclear. It's a low-yield tactical battlefield nuclear war. Those things are meant for the battlefield. They are not strategic. And the US has been very clear that if he does that, the consequences will be catastrophic. The US has stopped short of saying that its response will be measured and proportionate, which even surprised me, because it has similar capabilities, which are nuclear-tipped ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, but it does not intend to use it because it doesn't want the war escalating. Now, Putin is depending on his policy that has been built into the Russian doctrine. It's called first use. That if it essentially means that if Russia thinks that it's under existential threat, that its territory is being threatened, its sovereignty is being threatened, then it has the right to use nuclear weapons, even though what it's facing is conventional weapons. America has the same policy as well. So Russia has everything to lose. And it's just waiting for the West to blink, because that's the only way it can go forward. If he ends up using the nuclear war, his tactical nuclear capabilities, what I suspect the Americans will do is deploy its cruise missiles, destroy all of its military capabilities in Crimea, and cripple its naval fleet in the Black Sea, and that essentially end him. So I think we should see this through, because I've seen comments, of people blaming the United States for taking this far and supporting Ukraine, for this long. That's what he's waiting for. If we blink, he'll do exactly what Hitler did during the Second World War, and this will get worse. And besides, the rest of the world will be held to always bowing down to dictators like Putin or Xi Jinping or the one in Iran or North Korea. So but if you ask me, I don't think this will lead to a nuclear war, no.
Because we also heard from Moscow, it keeps warning that the U.S.'s decision to send more military aid to Ukraine is, increases the danger of a direct military clash. But we've also seen today diplomats, EU ambassadors agree on another round. I believe this is the 8th round of sanctions. Is this having any impact, on stopping Putin, on slowing him down in any way?
Absolutely not. Not as far as his policy decisions on this war is concerned. He's not. He may be insane, but he's not stupid. You know, he's a predator. He's a victimizer, but he's not. He's not. He is not a murder suicide perpetrator. In other words, he will not commit suicide. He'll find other people to go, like Cannon Fodder, to go and fight his war, but he's not prepared to die for it. But he'll push it as much as he can. The sanctions won't bother him. All he's waiting is to see who will blink first. Then he'll leverage that opportunity and go ahead. Those sanctions won't do anything. What they'll do is degrade his capacity to further the war, but they won't affect his decision one way or another.
On the annexation, Russia says it will recapture those areas, the annexed territory that fell to Ukraine in advance. I mean, he has signed the laws formalizing the annexation. The international community is outraged. What do you see happening in the coming months, the coming days?
Well, to begin with, he did that out of desperation anyway, because under international law, what he did was contravene international law under the Geneva Conventions. That was wrong. So legally speaking, what he did was wrong. But even pragmatically speaking, you cannot annex what does not belong to you. You cannot annex what you don't have total control over. Part of what he's annexed is Lebanon, that Ukraine recently liberated. So how can you say you have all of the Donbass when Vladimir Zelensky has part of it? You know, so the bottom line is, if Ukraine carries on, Ukraine has been able to demonstrate its capacity in this war. It's much better than Russia. It has more capabilities than Russia. Despite the partial mobilization, we've seen that Russia's military is ill-trained, ill-equipped, beleaguered, backpedaling military. It doesn't have the capability to win this war. So I think the West should, despite the saber rattling, I think the West should stick with Ukraine and see this through. What they have to decide is whether to degrade Russia to the degree that they can contain it, or whether to obliterate its capabilities completely and neutralize it. That is the decision that has to be made. But I'd rather go for the former, so that eventually everyone from Putin all the way to these commanders of the peripheral nodes on the field are held accountable for the gross human rights violations that have been meted out to the Ukrainians. So that will become a deterrent, for others who think they can do the same thing and get away. You should not be allowed to get away with it. It's a bottom line, so it can serve as a deterrent to others.
And we heard President Putin televised meeting with teachers, I believe, World Teacher Day. He said that, I think his words were, he has great respect for the Ukrainian people, despite what he referred to as the current situation. Well, we'll continue to keep tabs on the situation. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Mr. John Essing is a lawyer and security expert. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me, Millicent. It was my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Well, Ukraine's First Lady Olena Zelenska was awarded the Knight of Freedom Award, and this happened yesterday at Warsaw Security Forum in Poland. The international award is conferred annually to outstanding figures. Last year's recipient was the jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The two-day Security Forum held in the Polish city will include British Defense Minister Ben Wallace, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, discussing topics related to the war in Ukraine and energy security. Coming up shortly. South Korean military apologizes after failed missile launch sparked alarm. Join us again. British Prime Minister Liz Truss has pledged today to stay the course and transform the UK economy, fighting to restore her authority over a party in revolt after a chaotic first month in office. Addressing Conservative lawmakers and members at an annual conference in the central English city of Birmingham, overshadowed by internal bickering, policy confusion, Truss sought to reassure investors that her plan would reignite growth and unite a divided country. An early interruption from protesters asking who had voted for such radical change appeared to fire up the Prime Minister and the audience. The conference, once expected to be Truss's crowning glory after she became Prime Minister September 6, has turned to a personal nightmare after she announced a new economic policy that sparked a crisis of confidence among investors.
Everyone can get on. We gather at a vital time for the United Kingdom. These are stormy days. Together, we've mourned the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the rock on which modern Britain was built. We're now in a new era under King Charles III. We're dealing with the global economic crisis caused by COVID and by Putin's appalling war in Ukraine. In these tough times, we need to step up. I'm determined to get Britain moving, to get us through the tempest, and to put us on a stronger footing as a nation. My friends, that is what conservatism is about. It's a belief in freedom, in fair play, and the great potential of the British people. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, or what to think, or how to live your life. I'm not interested in how many 2-for-1 offers you buy at the supermarket, or how you spend your spare time, or in virtue signalling.
Meanwhile, two top European Union officials have called for joint borrowing to help the 27-nation bloc navigate the energy crunch together after Germany faced criticism for going its own way with huge subsidies its peers could never afford. The energy price crisis, aggravated by Russia slashing gas supplies to EU following Western sanctions over Moscow's war against Ukraine, is threatening recession in Europe as it recovers from the pandemic. We heard that from Liz Truss, UK Prime Minister. Well, EU leaders scrambling to respond are set to ask the bloc's executive arm to work out how to tackle soaring inflation through a cap on gas prices, funding by joint borrowing. We understand Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, they've opposed this. They've cited concerns over security supply. They're also against joint borrowing, an echo of the EU's long-standing divisions that have come to surface again over the twin energy and inflation crisis.
The point is not to criticize any member states, but to find the possibility to make some further step. Because if we want to avoid fragmentation, if we want to face this crisis, I think we need a higher level of solidarity, and we need to put in place some further common tools. For example, what we did with this SURE mechanism during the pandemic was an interesting proposal. It is based on loans, and I think it could be realistic.
Let me, if you're talking at a European level, I think the suggestion, for instance, in the article is to consider an instrument such as SURE. We know that at the moment in different instruments and funds, there are billions and billions available that could be put to good use in the first instance. I don't think necessarily that for every new situation we need to design a new instrument. We also need to deploy the funds we have. We need to channel what we have and invest it in the right manner.
Joining us now, Dr. Olatunji Shobande. He's an energy economist with the Business School, University of Aberdeen. He joins me now virtually. Thank you for joining me on the program. So lately, we've seen protests in Germany over soaring energy commodity prices caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Liz Truss says the government is looking at long-term energy contracts with other countries, but had not signed any signed any contracts. What's your assessment of the energy situation the countries in Europe are witnessing?
Yeah, at the moment, thank you for the question. At the moment, the European countries are overwhelmed with energy prices, and they are actually preparing for energy blackouts. But however, they have been able to put some measures in place, at least up to 90% storage of gas has been done. However, we are seeing the situation where the energy price will continue increasing, and possibly there will be solutions to Ukraine crisis. But if there is no solution, what happens next will be the question. They have to prepare for energy transition in order to, give rise for renewable energy and be able to have access to energy in the future, even though they are unlikely to escape the winter time, because the situation is actually terrific. Thank you.
And that's the thing. What other options are available to them should Russia cut off gas supply?
Well, there are a lot of options available. It just depends on the energy capturing facility they have, carbon capturing facility. Because if they have to move to other energy mix, one thing that is sure is that they will need energy capturing facility instrument. Germany, Netherlands, and some other European countries also have access to gas, which have not been exploited. So they have access to that. And there are also other renewable energy they can actually finance to ensure they are able to meet up with the current consequence. So we are now looking at the future, even though the winter time is here. We don't know what will happen at the moment, but we are still seeing that if they are able to escape the winter time, what happens to them next? And that means that they have to invest more on renewable energy in order to have access to energy and to be sure they have what we call energy security. Thank you.
Let's talk about where you are. Liz Truss said that the Ukraine war was one of the things raising the cost of energy, but days ago or so, there was a U-turn on tax cuts by her government. What's your take on what's happening to the UK at this point?
Actually, the new Prime Minister tried to rescue the household from energy bill, and they tried to introduce what we called subsidy. Now, the subsidy was meant to actually cushion the effect of increase in energy price for each household. But they observed that even after that, the energy price still rise. So what they did was that they wanted to cut tax, income tax, so that they can actually increase spending. The simple economic logic behind cutting tax is that when you cut tax, especially income tax, each of the households have something to spend. And when you encourage a spending economy, then there's possibility for potential growth. However, there is what we call political miscalculation. When we talk about political miscalculation, the Vice Chancellor went ahead to, try to make attempts to actually reduce price and the cut tax for the richer range of the income, which has actually, bring about many people started criticizing the policy which was introduced, that higher income tax are not supposed to, to have a cut in tax, so which is the situation we have on ground now. But the move was a fantastic move to actually help households to get, more income through tax cuts, and so that they will be able to finance their energy bills and other commodity. However, going to cut tax for higher income earner was a major political miscalculation.
Well, it's been called a chaotic first month in office, but she's saying that she's going to stay the course. Do you think that she can still deliver the package of energy support for households and businesses?
Of course, I still believe in the government, that the government can deliver it. Because for her to have even introduced some subsidy, and also make a move to actually reduce the tax cut, because each of the households are paying more than up to 20% tax cuts, and they're also paying up to 20% tax, and they're also paying more on NI, which is the national insurance. For example, if someone is receiving £4,000 a month, it's expected to pay almost 600 as tax and almost 400 as NI, which is very huge on them. So by introducing income tax cuts, it will help the household to meet up with their energy bill and being able to buy things for themselves, which can also speed up the rate of growth.
We hope people can protect themselves against the present and future energy crisis. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Dr. Olatunji Sobande is an energy economist at Business School, University of Aberdeen. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Millicent.
We'll move away from the UK to India, where at least 25 have died after a bus carrying wedding guests veered off the road and fell into a deep gorge in northern Uttarakhand state. The vehicle was traveling along a treacherous mountain highway in Uttarakhand's Pari-Gaul district Tuesday evening when it careened over the edge, plunged at least 500 meters with about 45 people on board. 20 people have been rescued, said the state's top police official. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that all possible assistance would be given to the survivors. He tweeted, "In this tragic hour, his thoughts are with the bereaved families." Staying with India, snow is complicating rescuers' efforts today to reach a group of mountaineers hit by an avalanche in the Indian Himalayas, which killed at least 10, with more than 20 missing, the regional police told local reporters. The group, consisting 34 trainees preparing for high-altitude navigation, who were accompanied by 7 instructors, were caught in the avalanche at 5:45 a.m. yesterday. 14 had been rescued and were being given treatment. They were also trying to identify an advanced landing site, which is closer to the place where the avalanche had hit. Border police, who's working, added that the rescue operations will go on for a few days. The group had been making its way back from a mountain peak, Darapadi Danda 2, at 5,670 meters when the avalanche struck. In 2021, at least 8 people died, 384 were rescued after a glacier broke, triggering an avalanche in the hill state known for adventurous treks. South Korea's military has apologized after a failed missile launch during a joint drill with the United States sparked alarm among residents in the coastal city of Gunwang. They reported hearing an explosion and seeing a fire overnight. But the military, which has said there were no casualties, did not acknowledge the incident until 7 hours later. The launch was in response to North Korea firing a missile over Japan early on Tuesday. This is the first time Pyongyang has flown a missile over Japan since 2017, and it prompted a show of force from the US, Japan, and South Korea, which conducted military drills. Seoul and Washington also fired a volley of missiles into the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan, between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. The South Korean military later confirmed that one of their missiles failed soon after it was launched and crashed. This was separate to the ones launched with the US. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has said that any new North Korean nuclear test would seriously threaten international stability and acknowledged past indications Pyongyang might be preparing for such a test. Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder told a news briefing, referring to the North's formal name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK.
I don't want to speculate on whether they will or not. As you know, there has been indications in the past that the DPRK is preparing a test site for what would be its 7th nuclear test. If they do such a test, from our perspective, it would clearly constitute a grave escalatory action and seriously threaten regional and international security and stability. Regardless, we continue to work with our Republic of Korea and Japanese partners for all contingencies, and again, we're calling the DPRK to cease these type of destabilizing and unlawful actions. The United States condemns these actions and calls on the DPRK to refrain from further unlawful and destabilizing acts. In response to the DPRK's ballistic missile launch over Japan, U.S. Marine Corps fighters joined Japan Air Self-Defense Force fighters in a bilateral exercise over the Sea of Japan on October 4th. Japan time. In addition, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command and Republic of Korea personnel conducted a bilateral exercise over the West Sea on October 4th, Korean time. These engagements were taken to showcase combined deterrent and dynamic strike capabilities while demonstrating the interoperability our nations share.
Well, back in Africa, the mediator sent to Burkina Faso by West Africa's main political and economic bloc, ECOWAS, Mahamadou Issoufou, says he is satisfied by a meeting with the country's new military leader, Ibrahim Traoré. Former Niger's President Issoufou added that the 15-member bloc would continue accompanying Burkina Faso's transition to constitutional rule after the country was hit by its second military takeover this year. They met at the Ouagadougou airport, where dozens of demonstrators were calling for more Russian cooperation and chanting anti-France and anti-ECOWAS slogans. ECOWAS had repeatedly urged the junta that took control on Friday to respect a timetable agreed with their predecessors to return to constitutional rule by July 2024.
I am totally satisfied with the meeting I had with the captain. We live with confidence. We will brief the sitting president of ECOWAS and other heads of state on our mission. But I can assure you now that ECOWAS will remain with the people of Burkina Faso and will continue to assist the people of Burkina Faso in this difficult challenge they face.
And the head of UN peacekeeping, Jean-Pierre Leroy, has sent his condolences to Bangladesh and families of the soldiers killed in an attack in Central African Republic. 3 United Nations soldiers were killed, several others injured after a roadside bomb explosion in Kaita village in the northwest near the Cameroonian border. The peacekeepers had been carrying out a patrol when one of their vehicles hit the explosive device, killing the Bangladeshi peacekeepers. The spokesperson for UN Secretary General Stéphane Jurek told journalists in New York that the incident happened when the troops were on patrol in the axis about 5 kilometers from the mission's temporary base in the prefecture Ouampende.
We unfortunately have some sad news from our peacekeeping colleagues in the Central African Republic. The mission tells us that 3 peacekeepers from Bangladesh have died after suffering severe injuries when their vehicles hit an explosive ordnance device overnight. A 4th peacekeeper was seriously injured and is currently receiving medical treatment in Bouare, where the wounded had been evacuated. The incident happened when the troops were on patrol in the Kui-Bohong axis, about 5 kilometers from the mission's temporary base in the Ouampende prefecture. The Secretary General conveys his deepest condolences to the families of the peacekeepers and the people and government of Bangladesh, and we wish, of course, the wounded peacekeepers speedy and full recovery.
Scientist Caroline Bertozzi, who won the 2022 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for her work creating a visualization of cell surface structures known as glycans, which has opened a new avenue in cancer immune therapy, called her victory shocking and surreal today. She said she hopes her victory will create greater awareness of the ways in which chemistry can be applied.
This click chemistry concept was introduced. Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has this morning decided to award the 2022 Nobel Prize in Chemistry in equal shares to Caroline Bertozzi, Stanford University, California, USA, Morten Meldal, University of Copenhagen, Denmark, and to Barry Sharpless, Scripps Research, La Jolla, California, USA. They received the prize for the development of click chemistry and bioorthogonal chemistry.
This prize is about a new way of making large complex molecules and also materials. I mean, it's about looking at chemistry like it would be Lego. So you have sort of pieces that you can put together rather than sort of looking at this chemical structure and thinking, where should I begin? You sort of have pieces that you can sort of glue together in a very simple way. And this is what click chemistry is, and this is what click refers to, is this, that you just click things together and build up something that's bigger.
Coming up on the program. Scenic areas lit up to celebrate National Day in China. We have that story and more in a moment. Welcome back. Aid agencies and local officials in Somalia are warning of a looming catastrophe, with hundreds of thousands threatened by starvation unless aid is urgently provided. According to a minister in the regional administration, 50% of people who need help are not receiving it. The worst drought in decades is driving many people from their homes. Many others are cut off from potential help by a long-running Islamist insurgency.
Isaac Hassan has once again been forced to flee his home. In Somalia's 2011 famine, 4 of his children died from starvation, and the rest of the family fled to the capital, Mogadishu. He returned to his hometown a year later, but now, amidst the Horn of Africa's worst drought in 4 decades, he's again joined an exodus in search of food.
We fled Mogadishu during the 2011 famine. We traveled by car for 2 days to a camp for displaced people in Mogadishu.
Hassan now lives at a camp in Baidoa city.
People became weak because of hunger. We had to flee for our lives. I came to this camp in Baidoa during the month of Ramadan. My wife died of hunger here, and I became helpless. All my livestock and crops were also wiped out.
Hassan is one of more than 1 million Somalis, according to the UN's refugee agency, forced from their homes. Over 7 million are experiencing acute food insecurity. Experts warn that a 5th rainy season is likely to fail. UNHCR field assistant Asma Brahim says unaccompanied children are among those arriving.
You will find that some people are unaccompanied, or they don't have children that are going alone, that do not have parents with them. You can understand the level of situation they are in for not having a family, and unprotected children and families, and mother who is giving birth outside this area who does not have something to eat. I think it is very hard even to understand that situation. We understand, but we need or request donors on their support to scale up everything.
Pastoralism and farming sustain over half of Somalia's population, but the parched landscape has resulted in the loss of over 3 million livestock from hunger and a lack of water.
A Lebanese member of parliament entered a branch of Byblos Bank north of Beirut today with a group of associates to demand access to her frozen savings to pay for surgery. Cynthia Zarazia, a first-time parliamentarian who was elected in May to represent Beirut, entered the bank unarmed and demanded $8,500 in cash. Cases of bank hold-ups and protests have snowballed across Lebanon recently as depositors have grown exasperated over informal capital controls that banks have imposed since an economic downturn began in 2019. Depositors can only withdraw limited amounts in US dollars or the Lebanese pound, which has lost more than 95% of its value since the crisis began. The bank branch shut down after Zarazia entered. Kenyan maize farmers have started growing avocados because of the high global demand for the trendy superfood, and also exporters had cultivated international supply chains. Ibrahim Simiyu is one of them who runs a business that mentors other farmers who are starting orchards and helps market their produce abroad.
Albert Gumo, like other small-scale farmers in western Kenya, has traditionally grown maize, but he's one of many who have reportedly switched amid soaring global demand to avocados. Against the backdrop of poor sales for maize and changing weather patterns, avocados offer better prices, better yields, and can be harvested continuously for 8 months of the year.
I started harvesting about 5 weeks ago. The first harvest, I got 6,000 Kenya shillings. The second harvest, I got 11,000 Kenya shillings. This third harvest, which is today, after 8 weeks, I probably am going to get 30,000.
He's one of 5,000 farmers working with Ibrahim Simiyu, a retired electronic engineer who started a business in 2018 promoting avocados for export. Simiyu also trains farmers on how to grow quality crops.
Like many of those farmers, we also had to diversify from maize to avocado, mainly because we understood and believe that avocado has got better returns on investment in terms of cash than maize does. That's not to say maize is not important.
Kenya is now Africa's biggest producer of avocados. It exports about 80,000 metric tons annually. From the farm, the produce ends up at plants like Mofarm Fresh Fruit Exporters. There, the avocados are cleaned and packaged before being shipped to markets in Europe, the Middle East, and elsewhere in Africa. Clarice Wambui is a pack house manager at Mofarm.
Our biggest market right now for the Hass avocado is in Spain, and also some quantities they go to the Netherlands. For Fuerte we do the Middle East and also Egypt. And also we have some quantities which go to Turkey.
Kenya has also ventured into the Asian market. In August this year, it became the first African country to export fresh avocados to China.
At least 13 whales have been found dead along Argentine Patagonia's coast since the end of September. Local media reports that from September 24, southern right whales Ebulena australis had been found on beaches in the southern province of Chubut in the region of Patagonia. Photographs taken Monday shows a whale washed ashore at Puerto Madryn in the Nuevo Gulf. Argentina's Whales Conservation Institute have been conducting this species. However, the cause of death has yet to be determined. Biologists suspect poisoning due to biotoxic substances found in algal blooms known as red tides. Injuries from fishing nets have not been found on the whales, which seem to be well fed, according to the institute. Colombian teenager Ivana Hernandez dreams of being the first South American woman in space and has even set her sights as far as Mars. When the 19-year-old astrophysics student isn't in class at Bogota University, she's in the observatory staring through the telescope at the stars and the universe, which have inspired her since she was a child. The aspiring astronaut from Santa Marta on Colombia's Caribbean coast was first drawn to science after watching the TV show Cosmos, a space odyssey. From this point, her quest to become an astronaut began.
My ultimate dream is to be the first South American woman to go to space and ultimately to Mars. To be honest, the stars and the universe in general has always inspired me. So whenever I'm looking through a telescope, all I can think is, someday I would like to be up there. And I would like to make a difference for all humanity, to go to the stars and to create even more than we already are here in our planet. So whenever I look at the stars, I just remind myself to my main goal, that it's that I want to be up there.
And scenic areas across China have put on colorful lights on antique streets and buildings at night to celebrate the National Day, displaying amazing night scenes. Light shows at night have been held on the well-preserved city wall in Xi'an City, northwest China's Shanxi province, during the National Day holiday from October 1st to the 7th. With a perimeter of 13.74 kilometers and a height of 12 meters, the city wall is the most complete of the remaining architecture of its kind in China. The bright Great Tang All-Day Mall in the city presents a unique view, integrating antique, cultural, festive, worldly charms, bringing visitors back to the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907. The Lishan County, southwest China's Guangzhou province, the Mao people at the famous Jinjiang Quanhu Mao village have decorated their hanging attics with lights and lanterns to celebrate the National Day. It's a lot of charm. Well, that's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Melissa Ntwonwoka. Bye for now.